What if the thing holding your company back is that you keep winning arguments? Well, that was Catherine Blackmore's story. She had the ideas, the energy, and the track record, but her leadership team was exhausted, angry, and ready to walk. She called it her bulldozer phase. Today, she shares the intervention that changed how she leads and why the best leaders stop convincing and start understanding. I'm Nil Spinya, your business growth guide, and this is Courage and Breakthroughs. Catherine, welcome to the Courage and Breakthroughs podcast. I'm thrilled to have you on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So excited to have you back. You've been a guest, a multi-time guest on every single podcast I've ever had. It's a true pleasure to have you back.
Well, it's maybe a testament to our long-term work
Yes.
together, all the twists and turns. And Nils, I'm waiting for that t-shirt with that badge or something I
Yeah.
can post on LinkedIn.
I've been on every one of Nils's podcasts.
Exactly.
I think that would be a highly in-demand badge. Catherine, there's this term in the world that has about a billion different meanings. The term is entrepreneurship, entrepreneur. And I'm curious, what is your definition of entrepreneur?
It's a good one. And maybe my definition is a little different. You think about new, innovative ideas, trying to solve something that's never been done before, leading people to places that we've never been. Those are all kind of classic things to what it means to be an entrepreneur. But I really think that at its core, being an entrepreneur, yes, of course, you're visionary, future forward, have great ideas. But Nils, I think it really is also about leadership, especially the exceptional entrepreneurs.
Tell me more about leadership and what that really means to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think of myself, first of all, as an entrepreneur. I'm probably maybe unique to some of the folks that you've had here and talked to folks about entrepreneurship. But when I think about my journey, my story is really about the fact that, yes, I am an entrepreneur. But a bit different is that I've spent my career really building inside organizations. Things that I build are operating models or organizational structure or ways that we can do something better or different, building communities, programs, whether they're customer programs or leadership programs. And I really think it's this mindset that I've always had in terms of how I've really worked within every company that I've been a part of. But I think what really has truly set me apart, and we can go through some of the twists and turns and things that I've done and maybe some of the pitfalls I've had, is that it's been a great opportunity to be able to share my unique approach to solving problems and my ability to be able to look at a lot of different patterns and a lot of different ways that organizations are trying to accomplish their goals, solve that puzzle, and then figure out how do we make it real. But it's that how do I make it real piece that I see where entrepreneurs can fall flat. And that's where leadership kicks in.
Let's talk about how to make it real. And what does that even mean inside the context of working inside an organization? And I like that distinction that entrepreneurship isn't just about being somebody who starts their own firm or runs a family firm or runs their own business or whatever. It's more a mindset, what I'm hearing about, than anything from you, and especially going down the leadership track. So let's talk about leadership a little bit and what does it mean to make that real?
Yeah. Gosh, I think for that, maybe we go a little back in the Wayback Machine, because telling my story is probably an arc that maybe some of the folks here that are watching this podcast or listening to it would be able to relate to. Because I think when we first start in leadership and we start building leadership skills, it starts with ourselves first. And we'll get to a point when we talk about how I'm actually trying to mentor others in this space, but really having an understanding of who am I? What are my communication strengths? How do I relate to the world? How do other people see me? And I don't know if folks here have ever done the Johari window, and Nils, you're very familiar with the Johari window, but I think those are really great exercises to get feedback and understand this is what I know about myself and what other people see in me. That's one part of the quadrant. Another part is maybe things that I hold back about myself that I don't want anybody else to know, and that's okay. But sometimes through coaching, maybe those parts of you should be revealed. I think classically, leaders maybe aren't as vulnerable as they need to be and really showcasing themselves to make themselves human. We can talk about that. But another part of it is, of course, what other people see. It's like the food stuck in your teeth moment that you probably should know, but nobody's telling you. And we got to work on that. And then the great unknown, which could be the great potential, is what others don't know and what you don't know of yourself. And so I think it's really about centering yourself first around individual leadership before you can even get to a point of just running a team,
Mm.
creating that first idea and starting to form people around you that's going to help you execute. And then as your idea starts to grow, how do I even drive something further and bigger? That organizational leadership. Those are all different skills you have to develop to be able to go from concept to then making it real.
I love how you start with the personal side, and I believe that 100% too. The first principle in everything leadership I teach is personal leadership for that exact reason. The Johari window is a really interesting exercise. Can you share a little bit more about how you've used that yourself personally, and then we can get into how you use this with others?
Let me talk a little bit about my journey because this is something that became more apparent to me, and especially in that quadrant, like where I think you get early feedback when you're growing up. You know that what you might be good at is things that you're being asked to do. And then you go down that path, and then how do you start to discover maybe what people aren't telling you?
Hmm.
Maybe what's holding you back? What are your limiting factors? And I would say the first thing, to go back to where I think about my story, the things that I was really good at, that thing that was known to me and then what others could see. I think about this first phase of me becoming a leader, becoming an entrepreneur, and then leader is what I would call my builder phase, where even as a young grade schooler, when the Rubik's Cube came out, I just had to have one. I wanted to solve it. In fact, a funny story about that is that I was probably one of the first kids that figured out how to solve it. And it's patterns and you figure out the riddle around it. But it was pretty new. And so my fun trick that summer that I would go around and family members would see that there was a Rubik's Cube or I had one that was mixed up and they said, I'll give you $20 if you can solve that thing. I, and I'm thinking, okay, this is some fast money. $20 is a lot I was that age. And so I would solve it. And of course, I had some really good money to buy Barbies that summer. But that was maybe one of the clues. But then others arrived. When I was in high school, I saw a problem where we weren't publishing what I thought would be a great yearbook that everybody would want to buy. I'm sure many folks that have attended high school, maybe you bought a yearbook, maybe you didn't, but I really thought that as a product that should really deliver against the experiences that we have had in participating in school in this community. And I really didn't think it told that story. And I sought to fix it. I even figured out, investigated how to design layouts to be more compelling, researched it, went to camps to do this. No one was asking me to do this. I just wanted to solve this problem. Figured out how we could even contract with local photographers, photos that were being taken for the newspaper. Why are we using our crappy photographer? We could learn, but let's get ones that maybe the folks that could give us the rights to using these photographs would be great. And it was a much better product. I think the things that I saw is that I love solving problems and I love figuring out how to make things better. But then it's not just about solving problems. I think the other piece that I found that others saw in me is this maybe confidence or ability to command a stage. And that probably Nils arrived. A funny story to share. In fourth grade, we had this production of The Wizard of Oz, and we needed a Dorothy. Now, I am not necessarily a singer nor an actor, but I thought this is something I'm confident. I can do this. I can help this production out. So I became Dorothy. And I think more than anything, not so much it's going to evoke some desire to want to be in the theater. It was more about the power of communication and being able to see how one role can help breathe to life a production that really needed to have somebody take control and say, I will do this. I will be brave. I will take this on because no one else was raising their hand. And then I think that this then led to Nils lots of opportunities where leaders really started to see in me this puzzle solving piece, the ability to take big problems, being confident and bold and being able to solve them, innovative in my approach, and be the one that would be ambitious about taking those projects on. And that's probably what got me in the door and at the table in many early companies that I worked for.
You're definitely the first person I know that hustled by using Rubik's cubes to hustle family members.
No.
I still can't solve one of those things. My youngest son is tremendous and has a brain much like you were describing, and he figured out how to do it relatively quickly, and loves to do it as fast as he can with time and whatnot. He showed me about 1,000,000 times, and it still does not compute. It's fascinating, right? I look at that and I see a problem, yes, and I see a problem, but I don't necessarily see how I get to the solution. And you look at that, see the problem, and you can see the solution and figure it out. And that's just the fun part of our strengths and how we all see the world differently. You and I have talked about this many, many times. and that there's value in all sides. That element of being able to solve problems and bring confidence and have other people see it in you. I've talked with many, many entrepreneurs, and sometimes the things that come easiest to us are the things that we also can take for granted and
Yes.
just assume that maybe that the rest of the world knows how to do this. As you progress throughout your career, especially in the early phases, how did you appreciate the skill set that you really had? Because it is very valuable what you're describing versus just saying, oh, yeah, I can do that. It's no big deal. Everybody should be able to do that.
Oh, yeah. This is where maybe that arc in your character development starts to take the dip. Maybe it's that what people see in you that you need to figure out, maybe I need to address this. So there are many aspects to this, but I would call it my bulldozer phase,
Okay.
where I had a lot of ideas and a lot of energy and a lot of passion, hand raising, trying to solve things. And sometimes that would show up in a couple of different ways that weren't helpful to move an idea forward. And I am sure that maybe many entrepreneurs may fall into this problem. I have many times. And the dilemma is twofold. And I think it really arrives around communication
Mm.
and then meeting people where they are. And if anything, probably those that have read Geoffrey Moore's Crossing the Chasm is also, I think, a really relevant model to use in this because you you want to, I was talking to people as if they've crossed the chasm,
Mm.
that they are an early stage adopter and they're excited about change when most people are like, oh my gosh, this is too much for me. I don't even know how to piece this together. And so I found that EQ or IQ wasn't enough. IQ was simply not enough. I had to really embrace the EQ of the moment. And a few things like when I would think about managing up, because there's us aspects of this too, entrepreneurship, whether I'm managing to my board or my investors, or I'm trying to manage if I'm within a company, the leaders that are giving me the remit. I really need to understand where they are. And am I meeting them where they are? And am I able to communicate clearly to them my ideas that resonate with them? Do I have the understanding of what their fears are, where they feel personally vulnerable or concerned? Because I just have to unpack that to understand if I'm going to get my idea through, how am I going to convince them? How am I going to make sure that this gets funded? How can I make sure that if it's like, I got to show short-term results, your idea seems like it's going to take too long. How can I modify my plan? How can I make sure that I'm going to appeal to what their concerns are so that I can get my idea through? So that's what I found a lot in terms of managing up, is really understanding who I was presenting to and knowing that everybody has fears, doubts, uncertainty, challenges that they're trying to deal with. And I can't be tone deaf to that. I can't just be so gung-ho that my idea is the best. It's not about being the smartest in the room. Sometimes that's like recipe for failure. And I certainly found that myself. The other thing I found too, Nils, is on the side when I'm actually even leading people. Early in my career, this is sad to say, I think that I was more oriented towards building a team of people that could keep up with me or
Mm.
could surpass me. And that's exciting for me. You know me, you know my strengths finder. How great is it that I can be in a room where all we're talking about is futuristic stuff and it's about strategy and oh my gosh, wow. But that's a trap because you find fast that you're not going to make it real, or you make it real temporarily and you don't have anybody punching holes through it. Well, what about this? What about that? And I would shy away from people that would like drag me down and make me go slower. I hated that. I still don't like it, but I value it now so much differently because what I also saw, Nils, and this is maybe like across my peers and the people trying to follow me, I had people that like were way over there, like in the distance. And I'm like, keep up, people, come on. And that's just not real. That's just not reality. And so I've done a few things. I've learned that you have to surround your people with people that know you, your style, but then those that can help punch holes in it. Those that also, I don't know if folks have done DISC, but I'm a huge fan of DISC as well and knowing where you are. And that goes back to individual leadership first, and then complementing a team around you that can help you be successful, but bringing people along, making sure that I understand the dynamics of my team. Every type of communication style and people are going to be helpful on this journey. And then how can I help bring them along? And so I'd say that was a big aha moment for me.
Wow. And so going from what you described as the bulldozer phase to what you just described as, full understanding and appreciation of oneself as well as your team.
Yeah.
There's a big difference, but there's a large chasm between those two. So how did you close that gap or build the awareness and get the help and do all the things to make that transition? Because frankly, a lot of entrepreneurs in particular stay focused on what they do best and if they're a bulldozer, they're going to keep on bulldozing. It's much more rare that there is full self-awareness and full transformation, just like you described.
Yeah. There has to be a pause. There has to be a moment. And maybe for some, it can come in many different flavors. Maybe you don't get the next round of funding. Maybe you've had attrition. A lot of people have left. You've lost some key talent. Maybe an idea did get accepted. Depending on the type of entrepreneur you are, we all face failure. We all face no. We all face disappointment. What do we do in those moments? Do we bulldoze along or do we learn from them? And I think I early stage just tried to bulldoze or maybe switch it up like, oh, my idea is not accepted here. I'm going to go find where I can shop it around and get my idea accepted. Okay, that may be one aspect of it for sure, but is that true growth? Is that true learning? Niels, you've helped me with this quite a bit. And I think that taking a moment and really doing some work on yourself and understanding where it's that back to that Johari window, what are people trying to tell you? And make yourself open to that. Feedback is hard sometimes to receive. There's a way that you have to process it and it doesn't happen instantaneously. Sometimes you have to sit with it. Sometimes you have to reflect and journal about it. Sometimes you just have to get multiple points of feedback. And then I need to start thinking about how am I going to practice to be better? And I can tell you for myself, it arrived in a few different ways. I've lost people. I've had people really threaten to leave because they're pretty frustrated with how fast we were moving or how I wasn't incorporating them into the picture. Ideas didn't get accepted. And those became moments that I had to ask why. And you actually helped with one of them. I know that one of the things I did, which was a very powerful moment, and I'm sure that if you listen to this, you would think, oh my gosh, could I actually do this? But we worked through this together. It was a moment where we had gone through so much change. My biggest fear was that all of the people, my leadership team that I've worked so hard to assemble, and we had been through it, lots of different changes, lots of different iterations of what we're trying to do, a lot of failures and successes. But we were asked to make a big switch in terms of how the team was going to move forward. And I just knew that people were exhausted. I knew that they were angry. I knew that they might want to leave. And that was my biggest fear. And you said to me, which I'll never forget, you're going to have to ask them to give you feedback in your job. We're going to do a call. And you helped me with this. We prepared for what gave me a sense of what was on their mind. I kind of knew it. But you need to just sit there and listen and just say thank you. And you don't say anything else other than thank you. And we did that. And it was powerful. And I had to hear a lot of the things that were on people's mind. Like things like, you change for change's sake. You're addicted to these transformational projects. I'm like, I am totally, but what does it do to people? Or I feel like I am not heard. I actually had, and I applied this with even some of the individual contributors on my team. One of the things that was actually a big aha moment for me was some of the programs that I had developed that I was so proud of, that we had put forward, things that invested in people's success, growth, and development, and things that were central to our culture and rewarding people for the way in which they were showing up and participating in our culture. And the big moment was, what you don't realize that you've done, Catherine, is that you've created a model where if you are an extrovert, you get rewarded. If you're an introvert, you're invisible. Wow. I was not prepared for that. And I needed to lean into that. I didn't realize that some of the communities and moments we were creating, if I was really comfortable putting myself out there, I could be seen. As simple as a shout out channel. It's like, okay, yeah, it's like many people probably have these things, but not realizing how we want lots of different styles of individuals because it makes what we deliver better. It makes our service to customers so much better. Some folks just felt like they were misplaced and put out by it. And I had to listen to that.
It's such a powerful lesson in humility and being vulnerable enough in the first place to say, one, raise your hand, say, I need some help.
Yeah.
And then two, volunteer to be in that seat to receive that feedback in a constructive way where there was no defense. I remember that session vividly. I remember the conversations I had with your leadership team prior to get a sense of what was going on. And you handled it beautifully. And that in and of itself was part of the healing process for the team, was that, oh, despite the fact that we work together all day, every day, I actually can say these things to my leader. We're a leadership team here, and that means bringing the tough stuff to the surface. And sometimes it takes help from an outside party to make that happen. And I was honored to play that role in that particular situation. And I know that things changed very quickly after that, because once we shared a little bit about what it was like once you processed all that feedback, and now you had the keys to the kingdom because you knew exactly, truthfully, what was on everybody's mind. No assumptions, no vagueness. It was just real cold, hard facts. So what was the aftermath of that like with the team?
And it wasn't just even with the team, it's how I've emerged from it, truly. And that's probably like where I'm at right now, which is about from a leadership perspective. And there's lots of elements to this, but just within the teams that I'm leading, one is to really spend time understanding, not just now it's about moving from myself and really understanding others and developing that understanding and empathy. And I'd say that developing your EQ has got to be one of the most important skills we have to invest in as an entrepreneur. And maybe just as a little sidebar, Nils, because we're living in an extreme time of change. And I think that's where I bring these skills to bear more than anything. I think if anything, we have a crisis of leadership. If we don't spend time and understand as entrepreneurs how we lead, I can't say whether or not it's going to result in us not being able to see our companies through and have them be successful. But I will say that it may result in having this gap in individuals that really know how to carry assignments forward. And I think it's going to be a terrible thing to see the aftermath of seeing future leaders not able to lead through change and lead through challenging times. I think we have to ask ourselves, am I contributing the chaos? Am I contributing to the chaos? Or am I building confidence in my organization that we're going to move through this? And I hear from talking to colleagues and folks that have been working with customers that there are challenging ways and things boards are putting in front of us, things that we need to do to drive efficiencies. But I am here to tell you that motivating people through fear is probably one of the cheapest ways that you can get people to respond and do work. But it doesn't last. It will not last. You're going to burn people out. And if your company does survive and move through these different iterations, you might find it very difficult to have continuity of having people help you build. And certainly, I think we'll come back to this. I'm sure it's always a pendulum. Right now it's all about efficiencies, and I know the pendulum will swing back, and it's going to be about, am I actually creating an environment that people want to show up and be a part of? And I think that the long game is the way, and you're training people to be better humans and better leaders through it. Nils, I would say that it's showing up all the time now. And I think the thing that I see now, probably more than anything, as a leader that's trying to think about legacy, it's about, I was able to earn a seat at the table. I did that. And for those as entrepreneurs, it's getting your idea funded, it's getting your idea accepted. You've arrived. And of course, having it come to life through leadership and having it have some level of sustaining success. But now it's really about bringing others to the table, in my mind. And I think it started, Nils, actually, if you want to talk about this, started with bringing a lot of different, I could say, like-minded entrepreneurs together around a supper club table.
Let's talk about that, because that was where, this was back circa early 2014, a few years ago. It was where we really got to know each other. We knew each other a little bit beforehand, but when you started this event, it was unlike anything I had ever been part of. And it ended up building this cult-like following amongst this very unique group of people that it just touched everybody in a different way. You share a little bit about where the idea came from, and then when it actually happened and you were running it and it was working every month, what it was like to see it grow into what it became.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't take credit for the idea. This is actually Don McClellan's genius.
That's right. That was Don.
CEO and co-founder of Blue Nose. But the builder that I am, my job was to make it real, to take the idea and actually put it into life, bring it to life and make it what it was. And the whole idea, and I think this is also really genius of Don, he saw this as an opportunity to learn from the community of potential customers. What's on our minds? What are we trying to solve? That could help shape the product. And what I know now more so than I did at that moment was that this is an opportunity to also have humility. I haven't figured it out. I don't know exactly if I'm solving all the right problems. I think I have a really good idea, but I can put my hubris in check and listen and learn from not just customers, but potential customers and an ecosystem and a community. And so that was one level of growth that I would highly recommend if I'm building an idea, make sure I do this today. Have we talked to our customers about this idea? Do we know if this is something that they would be interested in engaging with? And sadly, sometimes the answer is no. We've just dreamed it up in a boardroom. And I think we have to check ourselves and make sure that we're doing that touchstone grassroots, grounding moment. But the thing I think that leadership wise, it was super compelling is that it brought a community together. And I think no person should see themselves on an island. And I know there's many circles like CEO circles, CFO circles. In this case, there really wasn't a customer success circle where you could come together. Sadly, sometimes the mantra is leadership is lonely. And it is. As a leader, your job is to obviously be above the clouds and try to see the horizon and lead people forward. And at times you have to put your oxygen mask on first before you help others. And perhaps also in these moments that we're in right now, maybe not enough of us are doing that. We're actually just reacting to what we personally are fearing and feeling. And then that just immediately rolls downhill to our people. And so I think what Supper Club really provided for us is that we had all of that early nascent profession, no real best practices to be shared with others, and yet huge remit to completely change things like customers leaving and churning or product failure or growth. And those are some big things that we had to solve. And there was no blueprint for this. It wasn't like you went to school for this. And so Supper Club really formed us around what is everybody doing? What are our ideas? What are some of the challenges? And these are long lasting friendships that I see still. Obviously, we've spent so many years together post Supper Club. Many others that I know from Supper Club remain. And it's no surprise that became one of the hottest tickets in town, where we had a bit of a waiting list because everybody wanted to be a part of the conversation. And the other thing too, Nils, I think was central to this, not just about the community, but we talked about, okay, we can all complain. We can all say that this is hard, but what are the ideas? I really tried to facilitate the group to get to some nuggets we could walk away with. What is something that I can take back to my organization, to my team tomorrow that I can implement that will help me advance what I'm doing? And I think that really was the value, was the idea sharing and things that were actionable.
Yeah, I agree. I remember your summary emails that you used to send out after each event of kind of the core topics that were discussed, the themes and the outstanding questions and some recommendations on things to do. And the best part was everybody was struggling with the same problems in just a slightly different way. We had people in there that were working for $1 million a year startups and people that were working for publicly traded company and trying to stand up the customer success org inside of a behemoth doing hundreds of millions. We all fundamentally struggled with the exact same problems. And that was, I think, such a big part of the glue coming together. And certainly for me, I was early in my VP tenure at that point in time, and being able to hear the challenges that others were facing and share some of my experience and have it land with somebody who was way more experienced than I was, it was a tremendous boost of confidence as well that, maybe I do know what I'm doing at this point.
You raise a good point, because I think that as I think about legacy, confidence is certainly at the core.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about leadership, it's about being able to help people get to a point where they are confident. And there are some that are really good about, faking it till they make it. And there's something to that. But if I don't know that, how am I helping, I guess, back to this theme of a Johari window I can see, or maybe it's the unknown I see in you what you could go do. And I've had that sponsorship, and that's probably what has unlocked more opportunities for me than anything else. I point to Don McLennan. I point to Jim Fowler. I point to others in my earlier stage of my career where they saw something in me that I did not even know was possible. And they opened up the door. They pushed me through the door in some cases. And it was those moments that became very transformative for me in my career. but it was because they instilled confidence. And so, Nils, it's so great for me to hear that's what that environment did for you, because I think that's also a call to leadership, that we need to be helping others build that confidence so that they too can lead.
It comes down to this environment, and we're talking about it in the context of Supper Club, which was a once a month gathering of these leaders. But there's also the environment that we work in and are part of every single day. And you mentioned earlier, you really got to create an environment that people want to be part of. And I agree with that, and I'm aligned with that 100%. But let's talk a little bit more about what kind of an environment that is, because the world is changing. People are different. Working with people from N number of different geographic locations, different cultures, different backgrounds, different histories, different levels of tenure. You never quite know who's coming together. How do you create an environment that people want to be part of when we have such a diverse group that usually comes together?
This is one that I've heard actually quite recently from another folks, networking, catching up with folks. Summer is sometimes the time to do that. And a couple, like within the last 2 weeks, from 2 different people, I heard, you were always someone that knew the direction we were headed in, had a vision, had a purpose, and I'll unpack that a little bit. Or I worked for this company or leader and it was chaos. It was always like, okay, here's the idea today. Here's the new thing we have to work on, fire drill. And how do I even assemble what was just thrown up on the table after I leave that meeting, whether it was virtual or actual? So what I've learned, and again, Nils, you've been central to a lot of this, but this has been through my experience being on really great teams, working for great leaders and knowing how they've organized all of us around a vision. This is where a builder of a team and a builder of an organization, this is where ideas as an entrepreneur can go to fail if you can't build a team around it. And there is a formula, and I will share it here because it's worth repeating. This is what I want to pay forward so that we see great organizations, not great ideas that fail because we can't put an organization around it. And that is, what is your purpose? What is your purpose as an organization? And central to us, it's internal, what we do every day. But then the other part of it that I like to put forward is also the external vision, which could be very inspirational. I know from the team that I lead today, and we are responsible for customer references, we really, our vision is to shape the way the world sees Oracle. It's so simple, memorable. Everybody gets up every day and knows that my job is to shape the way the world sees Oracle.
Let me pause there, because there is so much just wrapped up in that one phrase. And maybe you could share a little bit about how we came to that sentence, because it's incredibly powerful and it looks really simple, but it was not simple to get there. It's only, simplicity is the far side of complexity. A coach I used to work with used to always say that. And I always thought it's so true, especially when it comes to this kind of work where we're talking vision and purpose. How did we get to that point to where it was that simple that everybody could think that, just that one thought every single day?
Oh, yes. That's probably as important as it is developing that one sentence. And this, we had to have everyone participate. And I know it's hard. There's ways to do it. But we chose to involve everybody in this process. I personally, when I took over this team I'm responsible for, did a listening tour. I wanted to know exactly what their challenges were, talk to every single person. In addition to that, I talked to all of our stakeholders. I understood things from customers too. So I had a really good understanding of what people valued from this team, but also where some of our pitfalls and challenges were. So I really needed to understand all of that. And then to participate in arriving at a vision statement, because everybody said time and time again, I don't know where we're headed. I don't know where we're going. And it just feels untethered. I don't know what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing like work-wise, but it's like, how does it matter?
Why?
Is it making a difference?
Mm-hmm.
So we brought all of that research in, and then we've asked people, also crowdsourced it. And of course, through tools, we were able to extract some of the keywords we were hearing and themes. But then I did a workshop, and you were so huge in helping us facilitate this. And I have learned, everyone, this is not something to think you could do yourself. You have to have somebody help you. Nils is great, because I had to have someone that was neutral, that really knew how to facilitate these conversations and see that I could pull back and be a part of the conversations versus trying to steer it. And that I could just let concepts emerge and not try to have my idea, because remember, I'm a bulldozer. I have to check myself. I have to pull back and make sure that every voice is heard. And I think we really arrived at that because every voice was heard. Everyone participated. We had a way to get through all these different concepts and ideas. And it took us, maybe a few hours to arrive at that statement.
Yeah.
And you kept helping us distill it down. And we also had examples of what great looked like and where we wanted to be. And sometimes, like, the most brilliant idea was just a voice in the room that said, I just think that I see you this way. And we're like, that is amazing. And sometimes it comes because you're piecing things together, and sometimes it comes because you're just getting us to talk and just, what is our culture like? What are we doing every day? How do we see our roles? And it just happened to just be a statement that was just stated. Just
And
out of
that
the blue.
statement was stated at the end of a lot of discussion of all the topics and things. It wasn't like someone who was withholding that until the very end and dropped the bomb.
No.
It was the evolution of
Yeah.
that entire leadership team coming together, talking
Yeah.
about these things, having the honest conversation about what the heck, what is why are we even here, and really answering the hard stuff like that, that ultimately that golden nugget was revealed at the end. And as soon as it was revealed, I remember everybody's eyes were like, that's it. That's exactly it. And that happens when everyone goes through the process together.
Yeah. And it was just so clear. And then the other piece too that's important that you also helped us with is really understanding our values. You can't just have vision without understanding the culture that you're trying to create. Because a colleague of mine once told me when we were forming, he said, if we don't invest in culture, will happen. It may not be the one you want. So just know that. Just know that you need to be intentional about it. And so we talked a lot about, I saw it, talk about culture was happening, whether or not we wanted this culture or not. I saw all the different words that folks had chosen to describe. And some of them weren't flattering, siloed, combative, not trusting. Those are not great words. But then, of course, there were the words of what people wanted it to be. And so through that effort, we were able to arrive at some core values that really mean something to us, as well as a brand that, of course, is the fun part when you can say, this is who we are, this is what's on our t-shirt. But that was also, Nils, just as important to be able to land on core values, to be a part of how you're going to put a group together and have it sustain success.
Those values been done so wrong in so many ways. They are the butt of every joke out there when it comes to any kind of business context. Some people have 12 of them, some people have 7. And the reality is, most times, if I or you were to go to any company that has them on their website and ask anyone inside the company, what are your core values? You'd be met with a long blank stare, because oftentimes it's a one-time exercise. Can you share a little bit about, once we created the values and everybody was agreed and aligned behind that, we had the purpose statement, we create the values, how do they actually become more than just words and become actually part of your culture?
This is why the leadership team and everybody on the journey is so important, because you have to start to adopt that language. For example, one of our core values is one vote, one rhythm. Instead of saying we need to be together on this, I'll say, remember everyone, one vote, one rhythm. And you start to use that in your daily language. And then the leadership team uses it in their daily language. And then you start to see everybody else starting to use it in your daily language. There's a side of me that's definitely a marketer, Nils. And so it's equally important to put some branding to this, because it needs to show up on things like your Zoom background, so that this is who we are. This is what we do. In addition to that, it needs to show up in how we hire people, or how we coach people, or how we think about performance reviews, and making sure, like when we do talent reviews, where we actually look at where everybody is at and how we can invest in them further, where they're at, what are they trying to, what do they want, where do they want to go with their career, and where do we see them? And because we have core values, we talk about it. Let's talk about where they're at. Do they drive one vote, one rhythm? Or in addition to that, because of what we do, we need to be maestros in how we conduct ourselves and working across our networks. Have they exhibited maestro behavior? It's those types of things that help us live them. And then the other piece that's equally important is, are we rewarding and recognizing people for our core values? And in fact, we're pretty excited about, in another week, we're going to be doing one of our celebration events where we will pick the very best of our team that's been able to demonstrate our core values. And so those are all really great ideas, but there's other things that the team just starts to go viral. Once you've done that at a leadership level, then the team will take it on and really make it their own.
That's the stuff that you could never come up with on your own. If you,
No.
if you tried to come up with these in isolation, it would never work. And two, even if you did, the ideas of how to adopt them would be top down. It's got to be a bottoms up type of thing. And the more involvement the leadership team has in coming together with them, the better the outcomes can be. Because, I mean, frankly, the reason why the purpose and the values and the brand work so well is because everybody wants to be part of something bigger than themselves. And it's something that is ingrained in every single person, period, across the globe. Doesn't matter who it is. They always want to be part of something bigger than themselves. And if you can create what it is and define what it means to be part of what the thing is that's bigger than themselves that they're part of, then it's a completely different world. All right, there's the third piece of the brand, which we touched on. Would you share a little bit about the brand and how it kind of encapsulates our purpose and our values?
I don't know if it was the hardest one that we came up with, but also important because this is about team building. And I think that startups in general, I think, are pretty great at this, where we have some level of camaraderie. We've got this thing we're trying to do and launch and see it through. But maybe in some cases, some early stage companies maybe aren't doing enough in this arena, but really having something that really gets the team to gel around an identity. So you talked about being a part of something that's greater than yourselves, but also having something that unifies you, that I am a member of, and I'm proud of it and I defend it. No different than we're going to be concluding World Cup at the end of this week, based on when we're talking, Nils. And you see that unifying jersey that I'm wearing, that I am Team Messi. I identify with Argentina, and you see it, you just see it, or France or USA. It's that type of branding. And so even at a team level, what is your brand? What is it that's going to unify you? What does your jersey look like? And so spending time on that, I think it was a hard exercise because we're trying to get at one word that describes who we are. And it's something that we would then put everything around. So for us, we arrived at the Playmakers. And for us, it's meaningful. And it's something that we now identify, like we're Playmakers. We've identified our Slack channel, we're Playmakers. We have Playmaker awards. We have Playmaker calls. We showcase Playmaker success. And part of our values are we invest in Playmaker success in terms of personal growth and development. This is also, I think, a huge part of what a leader, an entrepreneur needs to do to be able to bring people along and employ a lot of these foundational leadership skills in putting an organization together.
When we came away with that as the brand, it perfectly encapsulated everything, because it's always the last part of the exercise. You can't go to that one first, because you have to understand what the purpose is, then look at that in connection with the values, and then say, okay, what is this all? How is this all represented? And it's so powerful. And there is no other Playmakers team that exists anywhere in the world. So back to that uniqueness and feeling of significance that we're providing for the team, like, you are part of something bigger than yourself. Number one, you know exactly what it means to be part of this team. You also know the expectations of what it means to be on this team. And now people are in a, situation with, one, they want to be in, and two, they know how to win. And that completely changes the game.
It does. And one other thing too that I found that was an interesting phenomenon, that was how enduring this type of brand is. And so in another opportunity that I worked with a team for a number of years, and we created a different brand around this team. And it withstood, I think, 3 different significant org changes and changed to remit and what we needed to do in different builder phases of what we were trying to accomplish. And as much as that was chaotic, it was the identification of who we were that saw us through. We kept going back to that. That was the unifying thread. Because even if in some cases we had to change our goals or our mission, we were still this identity through and through. And again, what we talked about a minute ago about what a unique time that we are living through, the challenges upon entrepreneurs and leaders. Think about that. What am I doing to be able to create something that unifies my group that will be enduring and see us through?
Yeah. This is the work that often gets paid lip service.
Yeah.
And gets glossed over, and it's like, oh yeah, sure, we got, somebody in the people team will deal with the values and what. Like, no, this is the entrepreneur's core job, is to build, define, defend, support, evangelize that culture piece to create an environment where the A players want to live.
Yeah.
If you don't do this and you pay it lip service and you just put some words on the wall, you never live it or do anything with it, like you're going to get, as you described, you're going to get a culture. It's just not going to be the one you want. And you will forever be frustrated with, revolving door on people, challenges and people showing up and just doing the work. And it's relatively, in the grand scheme, it's straightforward, right? It takes some effort, it takes some work. It's really helpful to have somebody on outside, like a guide like myself. But it absolutely 100% is possible inside of every single business, no matter how big or how small. Would you agree with that?
I completely agree with you. I've done this in many sizes of teams. I've done this at a small startup where you could argue, well, that's what got us started. And maybe that feels a little bit easier. I've done this in teams of many sizes within the companies I've worked for. And I've been a part of companies that also had this from the very tippy top, and having this instilled down, which is probably even the best opportunity to have a company, a 6 to 10,000 person company, have it be so cascaded that everybody has alignment. Because the other thing too, that this then leads into is this other piece of the equation, which is it leads into what's our strategy that's going to help us accomplish our vision. How do we execute, and how do we execute in a way that we really respect our core values? So it's not just getting stuff done, but doing it right. And then of course the metrics. And of course, I'm always a fan of having a metrics driven organization. Is just how I roll. But you got to put it all together. You can't just, we're just going to put a scoreboard up. We're going to show that we're banging the gong. We've hit these targets. Okay, but what's the context so that everybody wants to be a part of the team and performing? And I've had, back to the point I made, I've had many people call me and say, I feel untethered if I don't understand the strategy. And it has to layer up. What are we trying to do? What's the strategy? What's going to get us there? How are we going to participate as humans? Because that matters to me. And how do I know that we're actually getting stuff done and that we're actually doing it right, which becomes the way that we're executing and our goals and our controls.
Everything you just laid out there, there's one word that often gets mischaracterized an awful lot or just overlooked, and that's just alignment.
Yeah.
It is a simple, beautiful word, but there's nothing more powerful than that. Alignment across your leadership team, around your purpose, around your values, around your vision, around your strategy, around your execution. If the leadership team is aligned, and you've proven this with every single organization you've run, from the small to the big, if your leadership team is aligned across all those areas, the rest of the company will 100% guaranteed be aligned too.
Yes.
Right? I always say that leadership team is the smallest team with the biggest impact.
Yep.
Right? And that's the domino, or they kind of act like a keystone in an arch. They are the keystone, like they hold the support of the entire arch. If they're gone, usually the person at the top ends up holding all the weight and becomes the system, and that's just never sustainable.
No, it's not. It's not. I mean, it goes back to just early days. It's on your shoulders.
Yeah.
You're doing a lot yourself, of course. That's just the way it is. I have been early stage where I am the lead salesperson, the key support person, the person that's going to help make sure things are implemented properly, the person that's going to renew the contract and make sure that you're successful. I can do all of those jobs, but it doesn't make sense when you start to add people that I would continue to do all of those jobs. And it's also difficult sometimes if you think I'm the very best at all of those jobs. So how could it be possible to hire anybody better than me? And what I've seen, Nils, I've fallen into this trap, and I've even done that over the last, I can say, yeah, in the last 10 years have I done that? Yes. And that is, as you start to scale and you start building your leadership team, you start empowering people to take pieces off your plate, to own it, to have that be their remit. Okay, what are you going to do now with your time? What do you go do next? What is your new job? Because you basically just got promoted. But sadly, what I see is that people continue to operate, still trying to do the job of what they just relinquished. And in my mind, you're stealing money from the company or your investors when you do that, because you are. Like, why did you need to hire somebody if you're going to try to do their job? And so I think that's sometimes the hardest thing. And I certainly saw this in the startups that were scaled and start to become very successful. The hardest thing as a co-founder I saw was just to try to move to the next thing I need to go do. What's the next thing I need to do? Keep growing. And if I'm a serial entrepreneur, you would know this. You would know that, yeah, of course, how I am at 0 to 50 is different than when I get to 50 and beyond. employees or even customers, it doesn't matter, whatever marker you have of growth. But you have to keep evolving. And the same thing holds true when I'm in a company as well. When I'm building things, I've done things within companies as the one person that's designing it from the get-go. And then you start putting a team around you. How do you start scaling your team? You got to make sure that you start empowering people and step back and you now have a new job.
You mentioned before that you're in this phase more now. It's about developing leaders, which is significantly different, as you were just describing, from the previous phases, the builder and the bulldozer. And now it's all about developing other leaders. And we know that when we are focused our energy and attention on helping other people be successful, it kind of goes at a different pace, right? You can't run the same pace, can't even run the same plays that you would run because you're not them and they're not you. And that's 100% okay. So you share a little bit about that transition and what it's been like for you to go from the, okay, I'm going to be the one primarily driving this to I have to be the one driving the growth and development of my entire leadership team. That's the only way we're going to get to the next level.
Yeah. It wouldn't be me to not have a plan or a framework or a way in which I need to solve this problem, which I certainly have invested a lot of time. And you and I have collaborated and we've shared a lot of notes on this journey. But I tried to really break it down to what would be actionable. How can I actually take what I have learned and all the tools around us that talk about leadership development and make it easier for people to learn. And this is when we actually had a great collaborator within Oracle that helped me design a lot of this. They themselves had a lot of great ideas and experiences in putting things together and really building out a framework for being able to have others help explore what is it that I need to find out about myself individually and really spend time with that. And then from there, so then how do I start to build skills running my team? And then how can I develop people for running future organizations? And I feel like it's definitely my responsibility. And maybe where I'm at in my career, I can finally spend some time around this where I'm stepping back and empowering people to do what maybe I naturally would have done if I were in their shoes, but making sure that they have the remit, they are empowered to do this. I'm stepping back and trying to facilitate their success. And then the coach in me starts to arise and being able to play things back to them and just help them be better. But that's just the coaching side of it. What I've also observed is putting together some structure and having different topics be ones that we can examine as a team. We experimented a bit with this and we found that having, if you will, like bringing people around a table where we can talk about certain leadership themes, and it could be things like accepting feedback, DISC, it could be overcoming my inner critic, building my personal brand, emotional intelligence, leading change. How do I develop going beyond? How do I think about things like political savvy and developing my executive presence? So those are like lots of great topics, but you how do you have building blocks to get to that? And this is like a 2-year journey with my leadership team of how we're going to get there. And it starts with just really examining where we are at the individual level. And we, circle around these topics. Sometimes we have facilitators come in and talk about what would be ideas and best practices. But a lot of times it's really about sharing stories and examining areas and being vulnerable about where I maybe struggled with something and maybe I had some success here and there so that I could walk away with a deeper understanding of why it's important and some ideas of things that I can implement. And the coaching comes in when I can actually apply some of these lessons to say, now that we have an understanding of DISC and I understand where I'm coming from and where you're coming from, I've even had this conversation the other day. Here's where I need you to help me because I am going to be rushing ahead. What I see in you is your ability to be able to challenge an idea, and I need to be able to step back and allow you to do that. Or others that are Ds on the team, you're going to be fast moving. I'm going to coach you to make sure that you're either assembling people around you because sometimes your greatest barrier is you're moving too quickly. And you need to make sure that people are following you or other peers and collaborators aren't seeing you as how I was viewed, which was a bulldozer and not incorporating their ideas. And so now at a position of seeing some of these same things that I went through, but having some vehicles to help coach. And I know too, Nils, you do a lot of this yourself as well. And you were, again, really great to collaborate and making sure that these are the kind of conversations we need to be having in growing leadership skills.
Everything you shared there is just a masterclass in bringing a team along with you. It's really easy to go by yourself and go fast and go far. It is far more difficult, but far more valuable, especially in the long term, to bring an entire team along with you for the journey and for the sole reason that you aren't the one that's going to make everything happen. That's the aha that most of these entrepreneurs that we work with come to the realization of at some point that, yes, the beginning part absolutely 100% had to depend on you. You are the reason why this company exists at this stage, at this level. But you are also not the reason it's going to exist at the next stage and the next level and the next level. And so it's that humility piece. So I'm curious what advice you would have for someone who's, maybe aware of or not even aware of that transition point, that it's just the life they've lived for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, that they just worked, in the business, and their greatest opportunity to get to the next stage is to begin to work on the business, develop a leadership team, and kind of go in a different direction. So what advice would you have for someone in that position?
Yeah. First of all, is to recognize that I identify the fact that I am there. You have to have personal realization in order for you to do anything about it. Because you can ignore it, you can step over it. You have to just want to do the work. I've worked with people, I know people that are in denial about this, don't see that they need to work on this. And I've even tried to coach people that are in denial, that don't realize that they need to work on this. And it's very difficult to even make any progress. And so there has to be you have to use what I had said earlier about moments of failure, moments of not finding success, moments of getting frustrated, to go inward and say, what is it that I need to work on in order for me to move forward? That's the only way, truly. And then it's about, what am I going to do about it? How do I actually put a plan forward? And it's okay to say, oh, wow, I've seen this happen. I've seen some folks get angry. I wish I would have known this at that moment. Oh my gosh, I would have known this. I would have had that better, this better. Of course. But that's the point. In human psychology, we repeat things until we're knuckleheads. Life will keep coming at us again and again, like Groundhog's Day, until we finally realize that we're in a loop. And it's only then that we can develop the skills to get out of that loop and then to truly grow. And I think that's just stage one. But then, no, whether it's things that I know you're working on, there's so many books out there. And some of it doesn't have to be, I need a PhD for it. And some of this is just truly about, okay, how do I start talking to my people? Get curious. Like, ask them questions. If you've never done that before, my goodness, what a great watershed moment. That, wow, they want to know me. They want to know what I'm going through. Talk to your customers. Talk to your partners. Ask questions. Just get curious. I think that's part of your walk through the desert, so to speak. You're going to find a lot out by doing that. And you have to do it in order for you to really even put a plan around it. Because you can't just say, oh, yeah, I know what I need to do. I need to change. Change what? What is it that you need to work on? Do you really know? That's why I talked to you, Nels, and we had that. I call it an intervention. It was an intervention. I had to listen to my people. I was like at a bulldozer moment, and I just wanted to move us forward. And how was I going to move us forward if I really didn't understand what was around me?
That sentiment of curiosity is one of the underpinnings of great leadership. And one of the things that I champion, we've talked about a lot, is the mindset that goes along with being curious. And the mindset's really simple. All it is you don't have the answers.
Yeah.
Best part is, if you don't have the answers, you also can't ever be wrong. Yes. But if you don't have answers, there's only one thing you can do, and that's ask really great questions. And that's it. And if you have the answers, your brain will immediately shut off and will not want to ask any more questions. It's just psychology piece. If you go into a conversation, a meeting, whatever, and you say to yourself and set the mind just to the point of, I don't have any answers, but I know they're in this room somewhere. I can ask enough questions that they will surface. And just like in the case of that intervention of how we're going to do it, just like in the case of building your brand and those values and the purpose, that was nothing about having any answers. I didn't have any answers. The team didn't have any answers, but we came to the answer and everybody agreed at that point. So that curiosity piece is a core foundational point, that the more curious you are, the better the leader you're going to be.
So true. So true.
We've talked about the potential impact of what happens to an organization, large or small, that doesn't pay attention to the creating an environment where people really want to be part of. What is your role now, not just with your current team and leadership team and your organization? You have your remit there, but knowing you, I also know there's a much bigger plan and much greater impact that you always have beyond that. So will you share a little bit about what fuels you from a futuristic perspective of what's possible given this incredible journey that you've been on that we've been talking through here today?
It really goes to what we've been talking about, Nils, about preparing people for the table, to be able to sit at the table, to be able to lead. And that's what's exciting to me. And at a time when I think that those that don't have these skills are going to be revealed, truly. I think that's maybe the silver lining in all of this is that it's going to be a moment where it's going to be a lot of introspection. And I see it. I totally see it. Things like, okay, what do I need to do next? I don't want to fail in this moment. How am I going to help my team when things are changing so rapidly? To your point, I don't have all the answers. We're so used to having the answers. We don't have all the answers. So how do we really get good at asking questions? That's what's exciting to me. So it's not just within my team, but I do a lot of work within my circles at Oracle. Actually coming up, one of the things I'll be doing is a bit of a TED Talk, if you will, on leading change. And that's, I think, one of the most important things we need to be, especially those of us that have a framework, have a way in which we've been able to bring people together in a time of great change. Could be at a time of crisis, could be at a time of, something went wrong. All of those things we're going to be experiencing, and we are experiencing. And so how can I be a part of the greater community of entrepreneurs and leaders that are helping us develop the skills and lead through change?
That's powerful. And knowing you, I know you will knock it out of the park, and the people who are fortunate enough to come into contact with it will receive a tremendous amount of value as a result, because some of these things you can't really learn without going through them. You couldn't get to the point you are without all the experiences, good and bad, that you've been through. But it's also, as you've said multiple times, it's about self-reflection and taking stock of where you are. And I think that's something that I'll take away from this conversation, just how important that is, not just, once a year, once a quarter, whatever, but on a regular basis. Where am I today? Who am I showing up as? And where do I want to be? And those are only questions that you can sit with. Like, there's nobody that you can go ask those and get a meaningful response anyways.
I think that's one of the things that I think are constantly a challenge. And it's things that maybe folks go and meditate around, or they take time off and go on hikes, or whatever you feel compelled to center yourself. But there's also a psychological need for us right now to ground ourselves and be centered as leaders. And I think it's not happening. And that's probably why we see a lot of these responses. And sometimes even I would say, yeah, there's a tendency to just react. And that is just what we can't do right now. We have to figure out, how do I center myself? How do I get perspective? How do I see things more broadly and more clearly? How do I pattern match over things that I've gone through in my lifetime that could be similar? And how do we get through it? I think it's a really powerful time to be able to do that. And I would say even on a daily basis sometimes, how do I breathe and not react to what's happening? How do I think before I say something? And I loved what you said about, how do I go into a meeting and say, I don't have all the answers? It's the things that I put in my brain that are going to lead to more an intentional way that I am showing up. And I know what I am trying to visibly deliver when I'm with my team, when I'm with my leadership team, and when I'm with the greater ecosystem.
Tell me this, what is the ultimate outcome of all this work of creating a highly functioning, very self-aware, very collaborative leadership team, of creating an environment that your employees want to be part of creating awareness within yourself of where you are and where you're going on your leadership journey? A lot of this sounds cool, and I'm sure people listening are like, oh, that's really interesting. But the ultimate question is always why? Back to our purpose. What would you say, having gone through this journey and created these environments and done all this work with your leadership teams, what's the ultimate outcome that comes as a result of doing this really well?
There's many, but I will say, just as a person that is at its core excited about solving problems, that's in my DNA, and looking at a challenge and trying to uniquely go after it and see improvement, see something better. For any entrepreneur, that's how they see the world. By investing this way, the future should just excite you because there's research around it. When we think about just even investing in putting time and effort towards meeting people where they are, understanding how they communicate as individuals, seeing them, seeing their contributions, being intentional about how you show up and knowing yourself, knowing who you are and how you may turn people off or inspire people to do their very best work of their life, and being more intentional about it, how powerful that is. Because when you think about where this leads, it's all about building trust is the underpinning, but it's not just me saying this. There was research done by this. Google did research around how teams succeeded or failed. And what they found, it wasn't about the smartest people that got together on a team or the team that knew each other the best or the ones that had the best ideas that got assembled. It was the team that was able to create this level of trust, this level of psychological safety, this culture that were the ones that were the most innovative, the ones that were able to see their ideas come to fruition, the ones that succeeded. And I think about what we need right now are more teams that understand this, because we are at a time where we do not have the answers. We do not have the answers. We need to be asking questions, and we need to have people feel safe about the confidence to be able to move through this time and the type of innovation and the type of society we will be, because it's been proven that this is the right way to assemble when we want to achieve greatness.
That resonates so much at such a big picture level. And the reality is the big picture starts with a small picture.
Yeah.
Right? Whether you have a 10-person company, a 5-person company, a 100-person, 500, 5,000-person company, doesn't really matter. The work is the same. Creating an environment people want to be part of, creating an incredible culture as a result of all the work you're doing, developing a highly performing leadership team. And the sky's the limit because of what you exactly said right there, which is we create an environment where people feel safe, where there is tremendous trust, and everybody knows exactly where we're going. And then the uniqueness of each person can shine. I got to share one story of a client of mine. You'll appreciate this. A client of mine, we had done all the foundation building work, established purpose and values and whatnot at the beginning of our work together. It was about 6 months later, and we needed to hire this very pivotal role, someone who is going to literally change the face of what we were doing. The person in that role wasn't the right fit for that position. After 6 months, that was clear. And so we set out to hire for this role. And we wrote a job description based on all of the core foundational work, everything we talked about today, and where we were going, the purpose, the core values, why we exist. It was a really, really well-written description. And it was just a perfect representation of everything that we had already defined with the leadership team. Someone who was a friend of the CEO, had known him for many, many, many years, was extremely eager and excited once he saw the posting. He wanted in on this and didn't quite know how eager until we talked to him. He had a conversation with him, went really well. And he told me he thought what we were doing was amazing. He said, I never read a job description like that. It really spoke to me. I got on the phone with him, conducted an interview, and he literally told me, I am so excited for this. And I don't even work for you guys. I don't know how you did that, but it is unreal what I'm looking at. And I'm just thrilled at the opportunity. Good news is he did come on board and is playing a pivotal role in what we're building. One perfect representation of all that work was just one job description in front of one person. He was just bought hook, line, and sinker. He's like, that's it. That's the what. That's exactly where I'm going to be. That's the role that I'm going to play. And you just, it helps you stand out above the noise. There was no other jobs that he was going to even consider. And frankly, we didn't really have to worry too much because he came through our funnel very, very quickly once we posted it. When you have that foundation, it's just so powerful to hear the words that came out of his mouth and how excited he was. And before he even knew if this was a possibility, he was thrilled. And he was just so driven. All he did was see just one job description with our foundation on that base.
That's amazing. And it makes sense. Maybe right now we get so in the weeds of the day-to-day and the problems and the chaos. And if I haven't invested this way, I'll get to it. Mm-hmm. Sadly, you'll start to see the challenges that arrive. And what you're describing is being able to recruit top talent, like getting somebody excited to even be a part of what you're building. If you're in that stage where you're trying to attract additional talent and bring people onto your leadership team, how do you get the best of the best? You're going to have to do some of that work because people have choices. Top talent are going to need to know, like, why am I going to be opportunity cost? What is it that's going to be unique and different and special for me? I think that top talent will always have choices and will always be discerning in terms of where they go. And I think the other thing too, that if I am like me, a builder internally in terms of what I can do within organizations, I like to say that the ability that I know how to do that is a highly marketable skill. And it'll probably become even more so as we see that this is the big gap. If I know how to do this, you can do it anywhere. If you don't, it's going to be a struggle and you're going to
Yeah.
wonder why I just have not been able to break through.
The old adage always holds true. It's a cliche, but it's 100% true. It's been true in every single situation I've ever been through, and I'm sure yours as well. Is people don't leave companies, they leave bosses. And if the leadership skills and the environment that you're in does not support your vision, your mission, your purpose, your values, then that's what you're going to get every single time. And the A players always have somewhere else to go lined up immediately. Always. And if you don't create an environment, they will walk out the door because they don't like to settle for anything less than a great environment.
That should always be on my mind, as it was for me when I assembled an 8 team. And I knew that that was going to be a big risk for me if I didn't address some of the gaps that I in leading the group. And it was transformational in terms of now where I'm at leadership wise. And I will never forget the work that we did and always apply that moving forward.
That means so much to me, and it's been an honor to be able to work with you, be your guide and your leadership team's guide through these very pivotal moments that shaped how everything in the future happens. As we begin to close out here, Catherine, I'm curious, what do you think all these experiences and these stages you've gone through in your career have been teaching you that perhaps you weren't ready to see at the time, but reflecting back now, you have a different perspective?
I think that when you first get started, you're sadly is a little self-centered. And I get it because you're trying to just get to the table. And even if you're thinking about that first idea of what you're trying to get funded, that it is a stage of trying to get there. But then now what I really see is my mission is that I really want, from a leadership perspective, to lead people better than where they were when I first had the pleasure working with them. I think that's one thing that I really want to make sure. And that I realize that for me, putting a team together is more about creating conditions where other people succeed. And if I were to give any advice to my younger self, that puzzle solver, the builder, the one that's maybe that bit of a bulldozer, it's truly to stop trying to convince everyone and to start trying to understand everyone.
Sage advice right there. I think that whether it was your younger self or I'll take that advice right now. Oh, Catherine, this has been an absolute pleasure. Where can people connect with you? What's the best way to get in touch?
Please follow me on LinkedIn. All the things that we share, I always have something to say and some perspective that hopefully is helpful. My whole brand and how I roll, hopefully you got a sense of this if you're watching this podcast, is the fact that I want to help others, again, be better than maybe where you are right now. And so trying to make sure that there's some little tidbit, something that I can share that will help you on your journey. And find me on LinkedIn.
Wonderful. Well, we'll have your LinkedIn profile link in the show notes and description here below. So, Catherine, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on today and sharing your wisdom and your journey. I really appreciate it.
You're so welcome. Thanks for having me. Great as always. Until next time.
There you have it. Another great episode of the Courage and Breakthroughs podcast. If you'd like to continue the conversation, go to nilsvinje.com. That's NILS, V as in Victor, INJE.com. You can listen to previous episodes, apply to be a guest on the show, or get in touch with me. And until next time, have a wonderful rest of your day.